In Victorian days, women's place was in the House, but not the House of Commons or the House of Lords. 60 years ago, women didn't have a vote. Queen Victoria herself spoke up sharply about what she called the mad, wicked folly of women's rights.
In the mid-1800s, women had very few to no rights at all and were mostly housewives, taking care of the family. Finally, women started to protest in the United Kingdom, but there was one woman who stood out from the rest. A woman who protested a lot more vigorously for women's suffrage and justice in the United Kingdom. This woman was Emmeline Pankhurst. On October 1903, Emmeline made one of the most important and well-known women organizations at that time, the Women's Social and Political Union, also known as WSPU. This organization was known everywhere for its activities. In fact, its members were the first to be called the suffragettes. From its start, the WSPU wanted to live by its motto, deeds, not words. The Women's Social and Political Union did not start out as a militant movement. In later years, former members of the WSPU claimed that the movement had been pushed into its militant stance by the rigid behavior of the government. However, in 1906, when the Liberal Party came to power, the hopes of the WSPU were raised simply because the Liberal Party was seen as the party that would pioneer women's political rights in Britain. The WSPU believed that the Liberal Party, by the very nature of liberalism, would push forward political reform. When this did not happen, militancy became a commonplace with regards to WSPU actions. The suffragettes now wanted to get arrested after Christabel Pankhurst and Annie Kenney made a huge scene at court in 1905. The WSPU hoped that if they kept on getting arrested, they might make newspaper headlines, thus causing them a political problem for the Parliament. Then, the Parliament will have to do something, hopefully giving women the vote. Christabel said that after she got arrested, that this was the beginning of a campaign, the like of which was never known in England, or for that matter in any other country. We interrupted a great many meetings, and were violently thrown and insulted. Often we were painfully bruised and hurt. Pankhurst was arrested for the first time on February 1908 when she tried to enter Parliament to deliver a protest resolution to the Prime Minister. In 1909, she struck a police officer twice in the face to ensure she would be arrested, and during her trial on October 21, 1908, she told the court, "We are here not because we are law breakers, we are here in our efforts to become law makers." In 1910, a group of MPs agreed to draft a bill, interfering with letting the women vote. A little satisfied, the WSPU cut down on their movements. However, when it was clear that the bill would not pass, Emmeline was enraged. When it was defeated, Pankhurst led a protest march of 300 women to Parliament Square on November 18th. The police's response was brutal. They punched women, twisted their arms, and kicked women. 4 days later, Emmeline's sister died from her injuries. Emmeline and her suffragettes protested strongly and were arrested many times for rebelling openly on the streets or damaging private property. In 1909, when many other women got arrested for similar charges, the WSPU members took the risk of going on hunger strikes. Hunger strikes made a huge problem for the government because if a woman were supposed to die in a prison, they would become a liability to the prison. This then led to the Cat and Mouse Act in 1913. The Cat and Mouse Act was an act which made women get released before they can injure themselves seriously, and then once they got better, their sentence in prison was resumed. The government also responded by allowing the police and staff to force-feed the prisoners, a painful and dangerous procedure. But then, doctors started to consider force-feeding unsafe and dangerous, and with this, force-feeding and the Cat and Mouse Act ended.
One suffragette named Emily Davison was involved in many violent activities of the WSPU. However, one day there was a horrible accident. When she attended the Derby, a horse race, she wanted to drape a Votes for Women banner over the King's horse, but then she accidentally missed and got hit by the King's horse instead. She died a few days later. Unfortunately, she made the chance to achieve women's suffrage even harder and didn't make a good impression on women. Emmeline and her suffragettes continued to create violence and cause havoc. Women burned refreshments building in Regent's Park, pillar boxes, and a railway carriage. Other suffragettes took acid and burned golf courses that were used by MPs. Many people believe that Pankhurst instructed these women to take the action they took. Emmeline instructed that these women were not commanded by her or her daughter Christabel Pankhurst. As WSPU continued their militant actions, several members broke with the movement because there was too much savagery. Some members included Emmeline Pankhurst Lawrence, her husband Frederick, and also their daughters Sylvia Pankhurst and Adela Pankhurst. When the First World War began in 1914, Emmeline and Christabel considered that the threat posed by Germany was a danger to all humanity, and that British government needed the support of all citizens. They persuaded the WSPU to halt all militant suffrage activities until fighting on the European mainland ended. The WSPU and the government had a truce, and all the WSPU prisoners were released.
However, some members of the WSPU were enraged at why they had an alliance with the government. This caused the WSPU to split. The other group was Independent Women's Social and Political Person, also known as the IWSPU. Pankhurst helped the government by using her campaign tactics. She believed that Germany was the greatest threat and said, "What is the use in fighting for a vote if we have not got a country to vote in?" In the war effort, women could work in factories and took many jobs that were preserved for men, such as offices, farms, and postmen. Women were also included in munitions work, where they were exposed to dangerous substances such as mercury. When women helped the government during the First World War, it helped improve the chances for women to get the vote. The government encouraged female labor to aid the war effort. By the end of the First World War, there were 1.5 million more women working in 1914, and nearly 200,000 women were employed in government departments. The war presented an opportunity for women to promote themselves as the life of the British nation, in which they actively worked to strengthen and protect. By supporting the recruitment campaign, women were not agreeing to male cultural ideology nor undermining votes for women.
Whether women's demands were influential in shaping enfranchisement laws emerging during the war is debatable. In January 1917, the Parliament was amending laws and recommendations were made for a form of limited women enfranchisement. Later that year, the Qualification of Women Act 1918 was passed. The legislation made women eligible for the nomination and election to the Parliament.
When Emmeline returned from a trip to Russia, she was delighted to realize that women's suffrage was becoming possible. In 1918, the Representation of the People Act removed property restrictions on men's suffrage and granted the vote to women over the age of 30. Suddenly, there was a new problem. Should women's political organizations be allowed to join forces with organizations by men? Everyone had their different views, but Emmeline and Christabel Pankhurst believed that women and men politics should be separate. They remade the WSPU as the Women's Party.
In 1970, the legal age for voting had dropped down to 18 and probably would have taken much longer for women to achieve this without the WSPU's help and support. When women achieved the vote, women could now be educated, get jobs in which men used to do, own property, could become a member of the Parliament, and do much more. Emmeline Pankhurst and all the suffragettes that worked day and night, and they all preserved and accomplished their dreams of giving women the right to vote. Right outside the Parliament, where she protested so vigorously, Emmeline Pankhurst's statue marks her life's work. Emmeline is a hero to all women in the UK and was a stepping stone for other women around the world.